Welcome to Timeless Sports Tales, where we dive deep into the past to uncover the stories that changed the face of sports forever. Today, we explore the darkest chapter in racing history, the 1955 Le Mans disaster, a tragedy that changed Formula One and motorsport forever. It was June 11th, 1955, a day meant to celebrate speed, innovation, and the glory of motorsport. But instead, it became a day that shook the very foundations of Formula One and endurance racing. This is the story of Le Mans 1955, the death race, when the roar of engines was drowned out by screams and the track turned into a battlefield. The 1950s were the golden era of motorsport. Formula One had just been born in 1950, and the world was falling in love with fast cars, daring drivers, and the thrill of the race. Legendary names like Juan Manuel Fangio, Sterling Moss, and Alberto Ascari were carving their names into history. And nowhere was the spirit of racing more alive than at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in France, the most prestigious endurance race in the world. Le Mans wasn't just a race, it was a spectacle, a grand carnival of machinery and muscle, where manufacturers brought their best: Mercedes-Benz, Jaguar, Ferrari, Aston Martin, pushing the limits of engineering, speed, and human endurance. Fans packed into the grandstands, some arriving days before, eager to witness the ultimate battle of man and machine. Drivers weren't just athletes, they were gladiators, competing not just for trophies, but for legacy. But in 1955, that battle went horribly wrong. The 1955 Le Mans 24 Hours race was set to be one for the ages. Mercedes-Benz had returned to racing after World War II with something extraordinary. The 300 SLR, a silver beast powered by a 3-liter engine capable of a blistering 180 miles per hour, nearly unheard of for the era. The driver lineup was unbeatable. Sterling Moss, Britain's charismatic speedster, and Juan Manuel Fangio, the Argentine master, both legends in their own right. Jaguar brought the D-Type, sleek and aerodynamic, a machine designed for domination. Ferrari, Maserati, and Aston Martin all brought powerful entries to compete in what promised to be a historic showdown. The atmosphere was electric. Over 250,000 fans flooded the circuit. Families, journalists, racing enthusiasts, all there to witness greatness. The weather was perfect, the tension high, cameras clicked, flags waved, the engines roared like wild animals. But beneath the glamour and adrenaline, there was a quiet danger, a race infrastructure that hadn't kept up with the speed of technology. There were no safety barriers separating the fans from the track. No catch fencing, just low earthen berms and thin hay bales between machines hurtling at deadly velocities and the people watching them. All it would take was one mistake. It was 6:26 p.m., just under 3 hours into the race. The drivers were finding their rhythm, settling into the long grind that defines endurance racing. Mike Hawthorne, racing for Jaguar, had just overtaken Lance Macklin in his Austin Healey. Moments later, Hawthorne suddenly veered toward the pit lane, braking hard and catching Macklin off guard. Macklin swerved sharply to the left to avoid Hawthorne's Jaguar, a split-second move that proved fatal. Barreling down the straight just behind them was Pierre Levegh, a French veteran racing for Mercedes-Benz. Levegh had no time to react. His 300 SLR clipped the rear of Macklin's car and launched into the air like a missile. The Mercedes exploded into 1,000 deadly fragments. Its magnesium alloy body shattered, sending burning metal into the grandstand. The hood flew like a guillotine. The engine block somersaulted through the air. Levegh himself was thrown from the wreckage and died instantly. The crowd was decimated. Flames engulfed the wooden stands. Shrapnel ripped through onlookers. Screams rang out as the horror unfolded before tens of thousands. In mere seconds, 83 spectators were dead. Over 180 were injured. Children, families, racing fans. The worst tragedy in motorsport history was unfolding in real time, and it wasn't over yet. As fire crews scrambled to contain the inferno and rescue workers rushed to aid the wounded, the race continued. Yes, unbelievably, the race went on. Organizers feared that halting the event would spark panic, clogging the roads with thousands of fleeing spectators and preventing ambulances from reaching the injured. So for the next 18 hours, drivers continued to race, passing within yards of charred wreckage and grieving spectators. The decision ignited a firestorm of criticism. Newspapers the next day blasted race officials. Survivors and families called it heartless. But some believed it was necessary. An impossible choice in an impossible moment. It was an ethical dilemma that continues to divide opinions even decades later. Mercedes-Benz, though leading the race, chose to withdraw the next morning out of respect for the victims. Their gesture was solemn, somber, and final. In the weeks that followed, Mercedes announced it was pulling out of all motorsport indefinitely. They would not return for 30 years. The international reaction was swift. Nations across Europe banned motorsports temporarily. Switzerland went a step further, imposing a permanent ban on circuit racing that lasted until 2018. Investigations were launched. Lawsuits were filed. The world of motorsport had been put on trial. And in that reckoning came revelations. Racetracks were death traps. Safety standards were archaic. Cars were designed for speed, not survival. Spectators were treated as afterthoughts, packed dangerously close to the action. It was a system that could no longer sustain itself, and change had to come. From the ashes of the 1955 disaster, a new era of racing was born. An era where speed alone was not king. Safety became just as important. Tracks across Europe underwent redesigns. Grandstands were moved further from the track. Armco barriers were installed. Fencing became mandatory. Magnesium, the flammable metal used in Levegh's car, was banned. So were designs that fragmented dangerously on impact. Helmets evolved. Fire-retardant suits were developed. Eventually, seatbelts became standard, despite initial resistance from drivers who feared being tracked inside burning wrecks. The FIA took on a new role as a safety enforcer. Racing organizations began treating survival as an engineering challenge equal to performance. The Le Mans disaster didn't just change the rules. It changed the mindset of a sport that had flirted with death for far too long. Pierre Levegh, whose real name was Pierre, was more than a racer. He was a sportsman, an engineer, and a national icon. His death was tragic, but his legacy would endure. He died trying to warn others, waving his arm at Macklin in the seconds before impact, trying desperately to avoid a crash he could see coming. But the tragedy of 1955 was not just about one driver. It was about the 83 innocent spectators who died simply for watching a race. Many were families, children, locals from the Le Mans community. Today, memorials stand in their honor at Circuit de la Sarthe. Flowers are laid every year. Their names live on, etched in marble and memory. Their deaths were not in vain. They forced a revolution. The horror of Le Mans 1955 has echoed through books, films, and documentaries. It has inspired everything from graphic novels to safety think tanks. It is a cautionary tale that lives on in racing schools, track design meetings, and safety briefings. The Halo cockpit protection system in modern Formula One, the Hans neck restraint, carbon fiber safety cells, all part of a legacy sparked by the flames of 1955. Even Hollywood took notice. Films like Le Mans and Rush nod to the dangers of early motorsport. Documentaries retell the tragedy to new generations, keeping the memory and the lessons alive. Racing today is still dangerous, but because of what happened in 1955, it is no longer reckless. The 1955 Le Mans disaster is not just a story of tragedy, it's a story of transformation. It is the day when racing stood still and was forced to look in the mirror. The day when glamour turned to grief, when speed turned into sorrow. But from that horror came purpose, regulations, reform, and a renewed respect for life. So the next time you watch a Grand Prix or hear engines echo across a racetrack, remember the price that was paid to make it possible. This was the story of the death race, when Formula One faced its darkest day at Le Mans. If you found this video powerful, informative, or thought-provoking, hit that like button, subscribe to Timeless Sports Tales, and share this story so it's never forgotten, because some stories must always be told.